Today, we finna break down the Sacramento Kings draft picks, and we're gonna dissect and see exactly what it means for this current roster.
He stops. He fires from 20. He's got the bucket.
That is just as hungry as them.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sactown Hoops and Hype. I'm Carl Thornton Jr. Got my boy Mark Cap City in the building. But before we get there, we're going to hear from Scott Perry to see exactly what his direction is with this team, and how these new draft picks, or at least Neek, is going to fit in with this current regime or this current roster.
Going into draft prep, and I've just been here 2 months, that has been our mission, what we've worked towards each and every day as a staff, as a group, to find players who are going to fit that identity. As a reminder, things that are important that we're going to value here: competitive, tough, team-oriented, accountable, disciplined, and professional. And so, with that, we selected a young man tonight by the name of Neek Clifford from Colorado State, who we believe displays and lives a lot of those values that are important to us. So we're excited about that. Obviously, we were able to take advantage and move into this draft into the first round. We came into the night with not having the first round pick, but we were fortunate enough that we were able to get something done. He was a guy that we really targeted. We had a really good grade on. And so we feel like we were fortunate to get there and get him. He's very versatile as a player. He's a two-way player. You've heard me say that before, and you're going to hear me say that a lot. Guy that plays both sides of the floor, and that's important to what we want to get established here. He's improved each and every year throughout his career. He's an improving three-point shooter. So again, we're excited to get him in the Kings uniform and help develop him, watch him grow. And I'm sure for the fan base here in Sacramento, you'll find what a quality young man he is the more you get to know him. And that's important to us as well. Someone who wants to be here and is going to assimilate himself very well into the culture here in Sacramento. So,
all right, Mark, welcome in again.
Yes, sir.
What'd you think about those comments from Mr. Scott Perry as it pertains to Neek Clifford?
Definitely some good things. You know what I mean? Like the what we're bringing him in for and what we're looking to build for the future, I think is definitely, some positive stuff. Looking at his numbers, Neek's numbers.
Yep.
Coming in, almost averaging a double-double.
Yep.
And the double-double comes off rebounds almost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is definitely what we're lacking at any position, but then looking at his height, 6'5", could play guard, could play, the three.
Yep.
But, it's interesting to see if we're going to be plugging him in at the one also.
Yeah.
For the future.
4.4 assists.
Yeah.
That's not nothing to sneeze at, right? Coming from the college game.
Definitely within 35 games it said he played.
Yep.
So definitely shooting 50%.
Yep.
Almost 40 from the three.
Yep.
So a lot of good stuff. But,
yeah.
To see if we can transition that now to the league.
Yeah.
He's definitely get an opportunity.
Absolutely.
We don't give up, what is it, 2027 pick.
Protected
which
first
is
round.
Good, top 16 protected.
Yep.
So a good move going from nothing
to,
getting that, you know what I mean?
I think Scott Perry kind of learned the lesson a little bit from Monty McNair with that top 14 protected this year.
Yeah.
If it would have, you know what I'm saying? Like, you add a couple numbers of that, then you got a whole lot more protection on there.
Yeah.
So he got compared to Doug Christie.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Doug Christie, they say he rebounds like, what's the kid from New York? I can't even think of his name right now.
Hart?
Josh Hart.
Josh Hart.
Yeah, they compare him as far as rebounding to Josh Hart. They did the same thing with Devin Carter, but this guy is a true 6'5", 6'6" wing, 6'9" wingspan, defender, dog. He isn't uber athletic, but he has an athleticism to his game. Looking at some highlights, right? I see some of his passing.
Yeah.
I was very impressed, right?
Yeah.
Because at that position, some of the flash that he put on the passes,
Uh-huh.
you know what I mean, really impressed me.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to take a look at any of that
I
stuff?
saw some videos of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get off the pick and roll.
Yep.
IQ. Another good thing. Another thing I was looking at was he's getting to his spots.
Yeah.
He knows where spots are.
Yep.
He has no problem getting to the mid range using the elbow and kind of like the corner shot.
Yep.
But kind of mid range. He's got the body size to get there.
Yep.
But like you were saying, the passing
Yeah.
is something we definitely need. A lot of iso ball was last year.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think with Christie, the offense wasn't there, but hopefully gives them some range to kind of use that passing ability.
Yep.
Everybody, because I think everybody on the roster right now is a good passer.
Yeah.
Just
breaking down a little bit what Scott was talking about too. He talks about playing as a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last year they did not play as a team, right?
Especially after the trade deadline, it was kind of like get in where you fit in.
It's like hero ball, like to the fullest, right?
Exactly. If Zach was feeling it, it's going to be Zach's game. If it was DeRozan, it's DeRozan.
And DeRozan didn't give a damn who was feeling it.
It was his game almost all the time.
Every time, right? Like he had some good games, and then he also had some games where it was just like, I remember one game I went to, so I had season tickets last year. There was a game specifically against Miami. We were down. Tyler Hero was killing us. I don't know if you remember that game.
I remember a little bit.
Hero was killing us, man. He had like 27 or something in the first half, just killing us. They put Keegan on him, and it slowed him down. And then DeMar just went crazy in that third and fourth quarter. I think we ended up going to overtime.
We caught back up. Yeah,
we went to overtime.
It was in Miami, wasn't it? Oh, no,
it was at home.
It was here.
Yep,
They had one similar in Miami last year, though.
Yeah, they always play how Miami with the buzzer beaters. Sabonis had a buzzer beater. Fox had a couple of buzzer beaters there. Yep. We always play pretty tough with them. But DeRozan was going crazy. You know what I mean? Where you can see what the potential is and you can see how he fits in if he picks and chooses the right spots.
Yeah, being efficient.
Yeah, being efficient, picking and choosing the right spots, being the closer, not necessarily somebody that just dominates the ball or back you down from the three-point line.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Do you see Clifford being a possible replacement for DeRozan? Because to me personally, I think he's on the move.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think of a replacement. I think I would see him as far as maybe with the rotation-wise coming behind Murray. Honestly, sometimes at the two, but we spoke last night on the phone. A lot of out of place, positions that we got right now.
Yep.
So if we start to fall into place, I don't see him so much as far as replacing him right now.
Yeah.
Because I think Levine is there, and I think if we put Ellis behind Levine, and then start, if we're able to get Keegan to the three, I think that would be huge.
That's a dream of mine.
Yeah.
Him at the three, a traditional four, maybe Sabonis at the four, and then we talk about our other draft pick, which I personally was hoping as I was watching the draft. I seen his name on the board. I didn't know anything about him. I see his name. I see center.
Yeah,
didn't know anything about him. I just seen the name. I seen the C next to it, and I'm like, they're going to draft this kid. I was hoping they were.
Yeah,
I know the previous regime. They probably wouldn't have for whatever reason. They were just kind of allergic to big men.
Yeah, we haven't drafted a center in how long?
Yeah, man, I don't know. It's been a minute, right?
Yeah.
Like what? Since what? Kata?
Yeah, yep.
Probably, but he's still like not a. He wasn't this, right? He wasn't a stretch.
He was a raw player.
Yeah, nobody that you can mix with Sabonis or have a traditional big in there, mixing them with somebody that can stretch the floor.
Yeah.
When I seen this pickup, I was like, oh yeah. As soon as they drafted him, the first thing I did was just look at some tape. And this dude right here, man, he's a real deal.
Yeah, he can play. And I was thinking about it on the way here was, they say he started playing when he was 17.
Yeah.
So he's got 4 year?
Yeah.
So he's got 5 years of actual basketball experience, which is, I think it'll help him in the long run because his body wasn't put through that.
Yep.
He was a chess player.
Very smart.
Water swimmer.
Yep.
So stamina.
Yep.
A lot of stuff that he was doing prior, which isn't putting a lot of stress on the body.
Yeah.
Like as if he was on an AAU circuit, playing every weekend doing that.
Yep.
He seems like he's smart, worked out a lot with Victor.
Yep.
Overseas player.
Yep.
Kind of like I said, same thing, looking in the tape, looking at everything. He's definitely, again, going to get opportunity.
Yeah.
And to have him kind of have that tweener position to where he can play all three positions on the court.
Yeah,
He
I love
can
that.
he can get his buckets on the inside, mid range, and then definitely what the NBA has, as you know, right now, you got to be able to shoot that three ball.
Absolutely. And then me and you talked, and it made me wonder about Sabonis's future.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been telling people, like, I go back to De'Aaron Fox when he went to the front office and had that conversation to see what the direction of the team was going.
Yeah.
And they tried to bring in a wing. He wanted a wing. They brought in one of the all-time greats, but it didn't make him happy.
Yeah.
He requested a trade, and then all of a sudden, now it drops his value down to we didn't get exactly what we should have got back from him.
Yeah.
And my mindset is Sabonis just kind of did the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
He goes to the front office to see what the direction is. Now we draft a big man. Do you think the writing is on the wall for Sabonis? Not that this guy has to start. He can come off the bench, and then we can throw in JV, right? Traditional center, big body, and then go find in free agency another stretch power forward type.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What do you think about the future of Domantas Sabonis with this draft pick and Maxime Reynaud?
Yeah, definitely puts pressure on the team in general, as far as like Sabonis. But with him going, because of course it was brought up last year, having a meeting this offseason to see where the Kings were going.
Yep.
But I don't think they got anything out of it as far as a commitment wise.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those ones to where, you can go on somebody other than the center, but at the end of the day, the Kings got to do what's best for the franchise.
Got to have a backup plan.
If they don't have 100% from him, there's no 100% that we can kind of look like we can rely on you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. To where if I think it's just a safety thing.
Yep.
We got to, like I said, going back to it, draft for us.
Yep.
Draft for the future for us.
Yep.
Because if you're not 100%, we're not 100%. One thing we do know for sure is if we draft somebody, that can be 100%.
Yeah, you take a look at if Sabonis got injured at any time during the year, how the team did. We didn't have anybody.
No,
you know what I mean? Besides JV when we drafted or when we traded for JV, but other than that, before he came here, if Sabonis went down, that was it. It
Even
was over.
So Valanciunas gets a better look.
Yep.
But when we had Lynn, it was kind of a big drop off. You know what I mean? Lynn would get some points here and there, but even then it would be a surprise.
Yeah.
Kind of he was looking for the other guy, which was no problem.
Yep.
But when you got a guy that can give you like a threat, like once again, we were talking on the phone to where those guys playing the drop coverage in the system that we were running last year.
Yep.
With the guy we got right now, he can pull
hit that. He can pull that. Yep.
Yeah, which is going to open up the offense.
Yep.
Where if the first, second, or third option isn't there off the offense, hey, now we can look at the basket and see what we got there.
Yep.
And kind of play off him.
Yep.
And kind of I was looking at it. Of course, we got the pick from OKC, the 24th pick, and he was on their board.
Yeah.
I think they wanted him behind like a Chet kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which you kind of look at Chet, you look at somebody like that, which is he's kind of like similar build.
Yeah.
7'1".
Yep.
Lanky.
Yep.
But
average a double too. Which just a little fun fact here: the only one that averaged a double in a major collegiate conference, Carmelo Anthony.
Yep.
And KD,
yep.
And then our guy Maxime,
yep.
Which is crazy. Not to say that he's going to be up there with those guys, but damn, that's hell of a
comparison
company, right?
wise. You always nowadays it's about comparison.
Get buckets though, right? Like those dudes were certified bucket getters.
Yep.
Carmelo, that's all he did was get buckets. He didn't really care about nothing else. KD gets buckets to the highest degree. You know what I mean?
Being as far as a 4-year player and improving like that, and like I said, being able to hopefully bring that here.
Yeah,
it's definitely a bright spot. With draft wise, you're always enamored with the names.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But with us, it's got to be, fit wise and future wise.
Yep.
And something like that to where, a lot of teams are building. We're trying to build the bench.
Yeah,
build
absolutely.
Something like that because last year was not the best, and even before then, the bench hasn't been strong.
Yep.
So I think looking forward as far as what we got right now, we got a great starting 5.
Yep.
We'll see if that changes with trades and whatnot. But, if we can build that bench and those 2 guys that we got, I believe are instant plug guys to where, you don't go out and get a 24 and not look at, just send them to the G League.
Do you think now with these 2 draft picks that the Kings are better today than they were a few days ago or even last season?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Definitely, like I said, the center spot is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Upgrading at that spot
Yep.
nowadays, that's a huge one because, it was a bright spot for me too when I seen it. It's like center.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely got to be something that you don't go out unless it's going to be something worth it.
Yep.
You're not going to trade out or trade up into the draft and something like that to where second round. He was projected first round.
Yeah,
for
I
a
was
lot
about
of
to say that.
teams.
Yep.
He was first round. So being able to get him the second at 45 or 40, whatever we had,
42.
42.
Yep.
Is a big thing. A lot of different stuff happened in this draft that was good, I think, for a lot of teams.
Yeah. Yeah. And just looking at versatility, right? I
Mhm.
think we can give the teams just with this draft pick alone. We don't even got to talk about Clifford with just this draft pick alone.
Mhm.
Does something that me and you were talking about, right? If you line him up next to Sabonis, that
Mhm.
automatically kicks Keegan down to that 3, which
Yeah.
I think he's way better at.
Yep.
I think he can overpower a lot of threes because he's a big guy,
He can match
6'8".
up better with threes than he
Yeah,
can fours. Right?
absolutely.
Like, I looked up, a lot of power forwards, and it's just like
They're bigger,
bigger, stronger.
Yeah,
And a guy like Anunoby playing the 4.
yeah.
It's like he can play that because
That dude's
Yeah.
strong, bro.
Yeah.
Did you remember when you seen that game last year when he dunked and like almost broke the rim?
Yeah.
Like he got it all sideways,
So
which is crazy.
Sabonis can match up somebody like that.
Yeah.
He might not be as fast, but body size.
Yeah,
You kind of don't want to put that pressure, and then Keegan having to guard that position and then having to rely on him on offense. It's just going to wear him down.
yeah. And then you think about the way that they use Keegan since he was at the 4, but he was guarding other positions, right?
Mhm.
If he's guarding a 2 guard, if he's guarding a point guard, if he's on Steph Curry, then who's going to be on Draymond?
Yeah.
Sabonis can't guard Draymond.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? That's supposed to be something that Keegan's doing. When you take him at the 4, it really does put him on an island
Mhm.
because now he's taking up that position at the 4 where you should literally have a bigger, stronger body there.
Yeah.
But then when you take him off that, who's going to step up to do that?
Yeah.
You still have the center on the floor, which Sabonis has to match up with.
Yeah.
Now we're talking Levine
Yep.
or DeRozan
Mhm.
or Keon Ellis or Malik Monk guarding somebody that's just they're way out of position.
Yeah. And that's it's a good thing about Keegan being able to guard multiple positions.
Mm-hmm.
But it also puts the not burden, but the task on everybody else to guard.
Yep.
A lot of times, nowadays is we're looking for the 3 and D guys.
Yep.
Which is you got to have it nowadays, and I think that's Clifford was.
Yeah.
You got to have that guy. We were looking for that last year.
Yep.
In the trade deadline, we weren't able to get it.
Yep.
So that's a big thing that the Kings have been preaching for a while. We need a 3 and D guy. That's what we're trying to get Keegan to.
Yeah.
As a 3 and D guy.
Yep. Me and you were also talking a little bit more about Keegan, and then, we got free agency coming up,
Mhm.
and then there's trades that's going to be getting heated up, and, we mentioned Jonathan Kuminga,
Mhm.
right? And
Yep.
I just got a strange feeling that something's going to pop off, man. And I think that, I think there's going to be a couple of big moves that are going to happen, man. And I think he may ultimately land here in Sacramento. But I like Keegan, though.
Yeah.
But I think it might have to be
one or the other.
Yeah, I think it has to be.
Yeah, I think it has. If that happens, there has to be something else as far as like one of our other guys like DeRozan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It can't just be Keegan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because in the situation we talked about the other day was the contract situation.
Yep.
Keegan's only got 1 year.
Yep.
We're going to pay Kuminga that top dollar because he's due right now.
Yep.
And then we got Keegan for 1 more on a rookie deal. And
if I'm not mistaken, I think their restructuring lines up.
Okay. Yeah.
I think they got drafted there in the same draft, right?
Yeah, if they were, if it's a trade situation, sign and trade.
Yeah.
Then it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. But if we're getting Kuminga, which, it depends on the numbers, but I don't think Golden State will match, what other teams are willing to give him.
Yeah.
Based on how they treated him last year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
If you look at when I think Steph was hurt, it was during the time when Kuminga was when he was starting, right? And
I think Butler was hurt.
Was it Butler? It was somebody that was hurt, and it may have even been before Butler too, because I remember toward like the beginning of the season, Kuminga was going off.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Every time he got really PT, he
was going off, right? Like
I don't know what it was between him and Kerr or the front office, but like even in the playoffs, when he got his chance,
he was going off, right? Like he literally, and I don't know why people don't see it. To me, it looked like the game changed when he came in there. Like he was able to keep them afloat, which tells me that all he needs really is the opportunity and the right people around him.
Yep.
And he can be a star player. That's what I'm seeing. And a lot of people are saying that he's not that good for some reason. You know what I mean? And I've seen him
Numbers wise, he's I want to say similar to Jimmy.
Yeah, he's up there.
But he's just younger. So
And
I don't
super athletic
Yeah,
though, man.
yeah.
Like him versus Anthony Edwards in that Minnesota series, man. I'm sitting there looking and I'm watching closely to how they match up. And Edwards, super athletic, one of the most athletic dudes in the league.
Yeah.
But Kuminga's even more athletic than that dude,
Yeah, they
which
can
is
both get to the
crazy.
bucket.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he's like, what, 4 inches taller than Edwards?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He gets to the bucket, he draws the foul, and he gets and ones.
Yeah.
He powers through
And
contact.
he can shoot the 3 ball.
He can, yeah. But he'd rather go to the hole. Imagine if we had somebody that went to the rack last year at that clip and then was getting fouled and then had and ones.
Yeah, like, say going back to Chrissy's offense, we'll see what it looks like. But if you can have Levine on one side, at the 2, and then you put Kuminga at the 3 or 4, you got guys that are similar kind of play.
Yeah.
That are kind of like spark plugs.
Yeah.
Right? They can definitely feed off each other.
Yeah.
Whereas an offense where you can't really double much.
Yeah. Because Levine is super athletic still, too. Like, I've seen him last year, he was doing some crazy stuff.
He was still with the Bulls, but putting up some 30, 40-point games.
Yeah. And he'll still dunk on somebody, too, hard. You know what I mean? I seen him still eye level with the rim, which is crazy. So the Kings actually had a couple of more. Let me see if I can find it. But they did pick up some people in the
undrafted, right?
Undrafted, yeah. They picked up a couple of undrafters.
They had one save that I sent you. It was Jackson
Monty.
Yeah. From North Dakota State.
Yeah, what do you think about
him? I haven't seen much tape on him, but looking at his stats again, 50% shooter from the field, 25-3 guy. So I mean, like I said, and then what is he? 6'10".
He's a big dude.
Yeah.
I looked at it and he's a big dude. Yeah. I just seen him. He's just really he's not athletic at all. You know what I mean?
Like he's similar to like a Scal.
I think Scal had a little more athleticism.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I think Scal had a little bit. What was crazy about Scal is he was projected to be a number 1 pick before he hurt his knees.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Both knees, which is crazy. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, I don't know. I think the a couple of these undrafted players, I think maybe they just picked them up to play summer league and then maybe do some G League stuff.
Well, that's how it is. Every fill in the roster and see if there's anybody that pops off that it's kind of cheap.
Yep.
Undrafted is always cheap.
Yep.
But I was gonna bring up as far as like say we miss out on like a Kuminga, right? Because he's gonna get a lot of offers, a lot of interest.
Yep.
What do you think about as far as trade deadline or trades with like a DeRozan for like a Michael Porter?
A Michael Porter, yeah. I mean, I like Michael Porter, but to me, that's like a Keegan Murray clone.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. I think Keegan, more upside on the defensive end. Is what would you say? Michael Porter is more of a 4 than a 3?
Yeah, I'm just saying if he could stay healthy. I like the healthy Michael Porter. Even like
he can shoot the lights out.
Yeah, he can. He was projected to go to West, but when he went to Missouri, when he was on Missouri with the back injury, and
who did we pick up? Who did we pick on that draft? That wasn't Marvin Bagley. That was I remember that one too.
I forgot who it was.
I'll think about it in a second. It'll pop up. But yeah, I remember. I was thinking because I remember the back injury, right? And I was like, damn. But
he was like a number 1 recruit, in high school in the country and all that. And that injury kept nagging him.
Yep.
And even last year with the shoulder injury. But, like I said, as far as, seeing what we can get, possibilities for DeRozan, that would make sense.
Yeah. I mean, what teams in the NBA can actually use a DeRozan in your mind? Like, who do you think can?
I think the top one is going to be Miami.
Miami's everywhere, man. They're trying to get Giannis. They're trying to get KD. Yeah. You know what I mean? They're everywhere.
I think one for sure that they can get is, we're shopping him is DeRozan.
Yeah.
That we can get back, looking at that. If we get something with Miami going, that changes the look completely because if you look at the options we got, we're going to get for him. There's a lot of guys that have to fill up salary. So it'd be a 2 or 3 player to match that because I don't think it would be for a Wiggins.
Yeah. What do you think about, okay, so let's say if we're trying to build this team and go back to a traditional type lineup and we want to look for some sort of a power forward that can spread the floor, and then you take a look at some of the injuries that happened, Dame Lillard over in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Do you think for 1 year they can go with a DeRozan and we bring back maybe a Bobby Portis of some sort.
So you're saying keep DeRozan?
Oh, I want him gone.
Oh, get rid of him.
He gone, man.
Or trade him for
a Bobby Portis and probably another piece. I'm not sure. I think I think their salaries are pretty close.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But you get yourself a dog. You get yourself a rebounder. He's decent on defense, and he can stretch the floor like with the best of them.
Yeah. Like,
you know what I mean?
I wouldn't mind that as far as a Portis. I don't know if it would match as far as like what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
You going back to Miami, if we were to do that, I think we would ask for something like a Jaquez, and then add like a Duncan Robinson.
Yep.
Which adds two guys that I think
I love Jaquez, man.
Yeah, because he's
underrated.
Going back to the other episode we're talking about was, the scrappy guy, the guy that's going to do a lot of stuff.
Yep.
And Jaquez could score, but he can do a lot of stuff that's contagious.
Yeah. Hustle plays.
Yeah, hustle plays, and like I said, just being that Reggie Evans kind of guy that's gonna bring that kind of attitude. So, if I'm looking at it, I'm trying to. I don't want to go player for player. Of course, I want to bring in some guys that, if it's 2 or 3 players from Miami, or a pick and 2 players because I don't think Miami's really sold on Robinson anymore.
Yeah,
I think they shift that commitment to Hero, which is understandable. But if you can get some stuff out of if we don't re-sign what's his name we got from in the trade deadline,
LaRabia.
If we don't get him, I think Robinson would be a good addition in Jaquez.
I like when LaRavia was playing, man. I really like the energy he brought. Right, he was really intense.
No, yeah,
he can knock down the three. He played
remember
good
like
defense.
His first or second game, that kid was
getting busy though, right?
Yeah, one of those ones where Memphis didn't give him
the
look. He was a 4-year player at the time.
Yep.
He didn't get the look. Of course, coming here, different opportunity. He got the minutes. He got and it showed.
Yeah,
which is great. But in the long run, it's going to cost us now.
I know, which is crazy. But then again, like I think he does have an injury problem. I think he has a history of being injured. Last year he couldn't even finish the season. Right. I think if him and Malik were in the lineup at the end, I think it may have finished a little bit different for us because we needed that defense. We needed Malik's. I wouldn't call him a leader, but in those moments, man, that dude is money. You know what I mean? Like. Takes me back to like that Clippers game when they scored like 176 points. You know what I mean? When he was just going off. Or even the series against the Warriors, he was going off. You know what I mean?
Just LaRabia did some great things as far as just what he was doing. Like, the stuff he did brought so much energy. Yeah. It wasn't like a crazy thing he was doing. It was just consistently every night you knew what you were going to get out of him. And that was a good thing. It wasn't doing too much. It wasn't like, oh my God, we need like 5 threes.
Yep.
He would hit timely shots.
Yep.
He would always play defense.
Yep.
You know what I mean? He would, do the right things at the right times. That would give us a spark.
And he would give us a yell every once in a while. You know what I mean? Like I just, man. So when I'm gonna call it Fox's Kings, right? When Fox was playing, man, like he would make a big play and he wouldn't let it out. You know what I mean? Like it was the most frustrating thing watching the Kings get their ass beat, right? Yeah. And then the other team is over there, man. They throwing the threes to the temple, man. They over there doing the whatever. You know what I mean? They screaming, yelling, and one shoulder shrugging, and the Kings like they don't do none of that. They just sit there and get punked the whole time. You know what I mean? I'm like, where's the pride?
Yep.
You know what I mean? I think that's why, some people around the league were calling this a soft team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what we were talking about last time when Sabonis got stepped on.
Yeah.
He almost got his jaw broke. He always got black eyes. Nobody's taking up for him because we're soft. We can use a Dylan Brooks. We can use a Marcus Smart, somebody that's going to come in and run like, hey, man.
Not just for technicals, but just somebody to set the tone for the team.
Yeah.
To let, we're a young team.
Yep.
Somebody's got to be able to anchor us.
Yep.
And let them know and have confidence that, hey, we got your back and everybody's got each other back. Like I said, where when Sabonis got stepped on, it was who came and pushed Draymond? Nobody came and shoved him in the chest. Nobody came and gave him like, hey, this is going to be a fine or something like that. You know what I mean? It's playoffs. It was that time. Everybody was just like, what's going on? Trying to be buddy talk about it. Like,
while he on the ground thriving in pain, everybody standing around in a circle, like almost praying for him or something. You know what I mean? Like
Draymond's chirping and talking to the fans and, not giving whatever was going on. Like I said, just somebody to match that thing to where it's like, you need that. But it has to be like a piece that we're going to use all the time too, not just in
Yeah.
those situations.
Yeah, not just somebody like a hockey player just come in to
Yeah,
fight. Like somebody
yeah.
that actually comes in, he produces
Uh-huh.
on the court as well.
Yeah.
But he's a dog.
He's
not
an
about to take
enforcer.
that. Yeah,
If he
yeah.
needs to, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
somebody that's going to get us in trouble consistently, but just somebody that, you need that to where it gives the team that kind of confidence.
Yep.
Where if the game gets to that point where a lot of games are, it gets chippy,
Yep.
it gets emotional,
Yep.
Stuff like that, to where that guy is going to get you going and bring you together, let you know, like, hey, this is how we're going to be.
Yep.
This is
Yep.
going forward. Like, we can't be that team anymore to where, they know nothing's gonna happen. No buns are gonna get pushed.
Yeah, just come in and punk us real quick,
If
whoop
anything,
us, go home.
You're gonna get a lot of emotion out of Christie, but he's a coach. You know what I mean?
Yeah, how many times did Christie get pulled back since he was coach? You know what I mean? He had more fire on the court than some of the players. They pulling him back off of the pile. You know what I mean? Like, we got who do you think is out there like that right now? Do you think there is a player that's available? And I'll take a look at some of the free agents too.
Right off the bat is that Westbrook.
I love Westbrook.
He's got that fire still.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I always remember that quote that I think he said was, he's got a lot of friends, but when that ball goes up, nobody's his friend.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's just competition.
Yep.
And he's no matter how old he is, he's not going to let you push him around. He's not going to let his teammates get pushed around. You know what I mean? He's going to be there. And, like I said, the numbers he put last year, he still can be a vital piece to a team.
Absolutely.
To where, a leadership like that goes a long way, even for 1 year.
Yep.
You know what I mean? The stuff that he could bring to the locker room and stuff like that, with being so young, could kind of give us that experience for upcoming seasons.
Yeah. Yeah. I like Westbrook a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And last year with Denver, he showed me a lot too. He showed me that he still had something in the tank, number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, that he is a leader too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there was times where they just kind of seemed like they just didn't have it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just as hard as he
wouldn't let it
plays.
go.
Yeah. As hard as he plays,
mm-hmm.
he's one of those dudes that if De'Aaron Fox had that heart,
mm-hmm.
that dude would probably be one of the greatest players to ever play the game.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because he never takes a playoff. Never seen Russell Westbrook take a playoff.
Mm-mm.
I was going to say Kevin Durant, but he plays hard too, though, man. Like, I think when you get to that level, if you're going to be a superstar, you really don't have you don't have those moments when you taking the playoff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I can kind of go down the line of these great players
mm-hmm.
that just never take a playoff.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've ever had one of those.
No.
You know what I mean? I think the
not at that position, especially being point guard,
mm-hmm.
stuff like that. That's a floor general.
Yeah.
Having a real floor general. You know what I mean? We've had point guards, but not a floor general.
Yeah.
Somebody that's gonna command or demand the best of you and challenge you.
Yep.
And kind of like hold you accountable.
Yep.
Westbrook has no problem in those three things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then of course for the price, you're gonna be super cheap, veteran minimum probably.
Yep. Yeah.
And
we're looking like about 12.5 million or something like that.
Yeah. And then there was so much talk as far as like after Houston, that can he be a bench player? Can he buy in? Can he fit in? Is his time done?
Yeah.
And then he showed, in LA and in Denver.
Yeah.
You can be that guy still and not have the attitude that everybody labeled him as, like, oh, if you move him to the bench, it's a problem. He can't be that player.
And he did it and he thrived.
Mm-hmm. And he was efficient.
Yep.
And nowadays that word is big, being efficient. You know what I mean? And he would have his games where he would, be reckless and do that, but he's trying his hardest at everything he does.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Not the best free throw shooter, but he's going to try to get to the line as much as he can.
He hits some timely threes too, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like timely threes, even though he's not like this killer 3-point shooter. You know what I'm saying? Like, he really did hit some of those. Yeah.
If you get on some, but flip side to that, if he can also have a dry spell.
Yep.
But the difference with those two things is he's always going to do stuff, whether he shoots good or not, that's going to be consistent.
Yep.
He's going to be that person we still need, to where if his shots aren't falling, then you get nothing out of him. He's going to be the same player demeanor-wise and teammate-wise. Just because he's having a bad shooting day, he's not going to allow you to do that.
Yeah.
He's going to still hold you accountable and hold himself to the same standards.
Yep. And not to mention back-to-back MVPs and
Mm-hmm.
or not back-to-back MVPs. I'm sorry, MVP, and also led the league in triple doubles and had back-to-back seasons where he averaged a triple double.
Yeah.
Which is nothing to sneeze at, right?
Mm-mm.
So we know he can get the, they call him selfish or whatever when he's passing the ball around. But if you ask me, like, passing the ball around is probably one of the most unselfish things you can do. Even though he was assist hunting sometimes, whatever on the fast break. But why not though? Who cares?
Yeah.
It's still going to make your teammates feel better though, right?
I mean, you can't really hunt it. If 2 of those are going to happen in a game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the fact that you still have, able to get 6 or 7 of those rebounds or those assists, having a try, everybody gets one of those.
Yep.
You're not going to look and like, oh, but you didn't earn that triple double.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a big thing. And like, he could still get to those.
Yeah.
Even if it's a 10, and 12 kind of night.
Yeah, like a low grade.
It's not like it
it's
was
a bonus triple double.
Yeah, something like that, to where those 10 assists is essentially at the minimum
Yep.
of 20 points.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then those rebounds are second chance points, or they're limiting to other teams to one possession.
Yep.
Which we need both of, because when we're in those close games last year, even the year before, our suckiest times was third and fourth quarter.
Yeah.
We can't secure the defensive rebounds.
Yep.
And they would get second and third
Yep.
chance points, and you're almost guaranteed to get a bucket off that.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
And one of the big, those teams like we talked about the other day was, the Pelicans, the bigger teams, even the Knicks, those guys, you give them second chance points.
Yep.
The Pacers,
they're gonna kill you.
They're so young.
Yep.
That if we can secure those rebounds and look to get it and go, we're going to be in a better place, to where those close games now are 10, 15-point games.
Yep.
And we're getting better to where, like I said, rebounding, what you've seen in the draft, Neek.
Yep.
The center.
9.7 rebounds, or 9.6
averaging
almost a double. Yeah.
Yeah. But just together, those two players is 20 rebounds they're averaging.
Yep.
To where, you got Valanciunas in there.
Yep.
He's good for at least 7 to 10 rebounds a game.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
It's a bonus, 12, 13. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So rebounding is huge for us. We're young, but as far as everybody becoming, not becoming, but just adapting that rebounding mentality.
Yep.
Limiting teams, and then also giving ourselves a second chance.
Yeah.
Third chance, because off the rebounds last year, we seen, when Sabonis did kick out, or those guys would kick out, Keegan gets his shots, Monk gets his shots, everybody, Levine's hitting open shots, so if we can rebound the ball this year, it's just going to change the game completely. We don't need to do a lot.
Yeah.
We just need to rebound the ball and secure it.
Yep.
When we were doing that, it was bad.
Yeah. I think another thing too that was is just somebody that's down low that can actually contest a shot, contest a layup.
Yeah.
Like, how many times you seen wide open line drive to the basket,
and
is layups.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
And then Sabonis was, once again, we talked about it last night, was his fouling problem.
Yep.
When they get those second chances, that's when his fouls happen.
Yep.
And then he's put in that 4 or 5 game, or 5 fouls by the third quarter.
Yep.
And then we can't really stretch, go into the bench. Yeah, we can use Valanciunas, but it changes the game completely.
Yeah.
Because if they're sagging off Sabonis at the mid-range, imagine what they're doing to Valanciunas.
Yeah.
They're not even looking at him, right?
Yep.
They know the ball's going to get sprayed around to somebody else.
Yep.
And the ball goes in, stays with Valanciunas. It's just a back down from almost the 3-point line.
Yep.
Which is, not,
which is crazy.
Which is not going to do anything,
Yeah.
So, if we can keep him, if he's going to stay around, if we can keep him out of foul trouble,
Yep.
That's a big thing. Like, everybody's like enamored with his numbers and this and that. He should be an all-star. He should be, but the miles that we're putting on his body right now,
Yeah.
and kind of like we're looking at him like a Jokic.
Yep.
We're almost like, just wanting and knowing that he's going to get every night, but not knowing what it does to his body.
Yeah, because he's banging. Like, that dude is strong. And if you just look at the way he plays, man, he's boom, he's shoulder, boom, shoulder, shoulder. You know what I mean? That kind of pisses people off too, because now this dude's like ramming his shoulder into your gut. And now you want to go a little bit harder at him. You know what I mean? That's why he always ends up with a black eye every time you see him. You know what I mean? Because he's pissing people off because he's just shoulder.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'm going to throw an elbow at you. I'm going to crack you in the jaw. I'm going to step on your chest. I'm going to do whatever I need to do.
People he's doing it to are just way bigger than him.
Yeah.
Even if he's do it to Cat.
Yep.
Cat, he's a perimeter player, but he can use his body.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Even Nas Reed is physical.
Yeah. You know what I was thinking about too after we had that conversation? I'm just thinking about all the centers in the league that Sabonis just does not match up with very well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And there's Bam Adebayo, they're probably about the same in height.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you look at everybody else from every other team, you even look at like the Clippers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They got can't think of
Zubac.
his name, right? Zubac, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
who had a breakout year,
Yeah.
right? Big 7 foot, true 7 foot, 7 foot 1. Like dude's big. He's probably 7 foot 1, 7'2" in my eyes, right? Just towering on top of Sabonis.
Yeah.
You got Zach Edey over in Memphis.
Yep.
You got Klingon over in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
You got who else do we got? Maybe the Lakers. They really don't have a center or anything like that. But you look at Şengün.
Yeah.
Even though Şengün's not that much bigger.
Yeah.
About 6'11", 7-footer. But he just works Sabonis though, right? He looks like
he's
just
light on his feet.
Yeah, very light on his feet. He seemed like he just offers more.
Yeah,
than,
it's not so much as far as bumping. It's just he's just like Jokic. He's unpredictable.
Yep.
He's unorthodox.
Yep.
When you look at Sabonis, he's a lefty.
Yep.
He's
gonna go left every single time.
Yeah, he's a Zach Randolph.
Yep.
He'll go with his right, but as soon as he gets to the key, he's going back to the left.
Yep. Every time.
And he's had he goes up with his right sometimes.
Yep.
But it's not like enough to where you're gonna respect it.
Yeah.
To where if you just sit on his left, you're gonna challenge it.
Yep.
And then
or he'll turn it over.
You said the other day, or I don't know if it was you or somebody else online, but the off the rebounds, his vision isn't that great.
Was me. Yep.
He would get the rebound off 2 or 3 guys.
Yep.
And then he'd want to go up and try to get a foul.
Yeah.
And
when you got somebody wide open on the perimeter.
Yeah. And it's just like, those, I get it at times, but like, if you get it, kick it out.
Yep.
And then kind of reset. He would look for the fouls. They weren't there a lot of times. And then the frustration fouls would happen for him. And that's where, once again, he gets in foul trouble. I'm not getting a call there, so I'm going to give one up on this side.
Yep, and he get about 2 of those easily a game. Easily.
Yeah, and that's just, going back to what you said, was out of position.
Yep.
Like to where, the guy that should be bumping and doing that is the Valanciunas.
Yep.
And, if you go to the Celtics, Al Horford, he's able to shoot the outside shot, the mid-range shot. He's able to hit those, and he's way older than Sabonis.
Yeah.
He's not having to wear and tear his body and stuff like that, but he's able to be relied on in those positions to where, Sabonis were to get that outside shot. It changes us completely.
Yep.
And then it forces those centers to step up to where, now the banging down low doesn't have to happen as much. You can use your speed and your frame to get to the bucket.
Yep. And even to take it a step further, now that Sabonis isn't the threat on the perimeter, now this 5 can sag off a little bit. Now he can contest shots at the rim.
Yeah.
When ordinarily, like if it was a situation where he had to be out there as Sabonis when he's at that, at the free throw line or even at that 3-point line, he wouldn't be able to contest any of those cuts or anything at the rim.
Yeah.
That was another thing about the Kings too, that I hope they the off the ball movement, right?
Yeah.
Passing and cutting, right? Knowing the right time to cut with a purpose, right? Not just Keegan Murray, man, he has so many opportunities to cut to the basket. And I'm just looking, I'm like, why are you not cutting with a purpose? Why are you not faking, going to the basket hard, putting your hand up, expecting the ball?
Yeah, there's a lot of that Mac Brown offense to me, like I said, is a lot of robotic stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, there was a lot of options off of it, but it was a lot of stuff to where on defense, if you just sagged off a little bit.
Yeah, you can't do nothing. It's easy to guard.
Either, we contest a 3 or we deny the inside, which is what we did. They wanted us to shoot from the outside.
Yep.
And then, Mike Brown and Christie giving the green light.
Yep.
We got a lot of open looks, but we weren't a great 3-point shooting team.
Yep.
To where it's like a lot of teams were like, okay, we're going to give up something, which is the 3.
Yep.
Right? Don't want to give up constantly, paint touches and stuff like that. And, some games would be good, some games would be bad, but obviously more bad than good.
Yeah.
To where, like say, Monk, he has bad games, he's going to fire no matter what.
Yep.
Wasn't always efficient.
Yep.
Levine, when he first came over, shooting wasn't great.
Yep.
Those 10 to 15 games that it took Levine to get acclimated, we needed those.
Yeah.
It was, those losses were big.
Yep.
It wasn't, a lot, but, when those close games, I know they were, you got a team like that to where we weren't bad, but where's the ball going to?
Yep.
And I know when you got a team like that, everybody wants the ball.
Yep.
I'm not going to say it, but Sabonis wants it.
Oh, absolutely.
DeRozan, we know, is probably going to go in his hands.
Yep.
Levine wants it.
Yep.
Murray, you can maybe look at Murray off of, a play if we got enough time to kick to him.
Yep.
Which I think he got some opportunities last year, to try to close the game.
Yep.
But it's just, going forward, we gotta trust in each other as far as, not having just one guy we rely on.
Yeah.
Team ball is always going to be the best choice you can make.
Yep. I think another big mistake that the team made, and I think coaching should have came in with this too, is when it became clutch time, it was give the ball to DeMar, and then everybody just watch him, right? We got Keegan standing in the corner. We got Zach LaVine standing next to him. We got Sabonis down there just standing around. We got Keon, even though Keon is a very, very, very good 3-point shooter. And in my opinion, he needs to shoot more. I think he's 44%, like very good free throw or 3-point shooter. But what I just kept seeing was, when it's down to the clutch, let's just give the ball to DeMar DeRozan and then just let him fire up a bunch of bad shots at the end, which I think probably cost us 5 to 6 games. You know what I mean? So it's like, do we need to I do think we need to move on from him, number one, just because for that anyway, I think he just commands that. You know what I mean? Because at the end of every year, he's always one of the most clutch players every single year anyway. And then I think some of these younger players on the team may even admire that in some way, shape, or form. And I remember Sabonis even said it himself, I'm just going to give the ball to DeMar and move out of the way. Well, no, that's not how you win games with one guy, right? Especially if he's backing the ball down from the 3-point line and we got Keegan wide open, Zach wide open, Keon wide open, Sabonis wide open. That's not very efficient and it's super easy to guard. You know what I mean?
And it's not just that, like having something just to play wise to where we got action off, even if it is to him, to where we have a rebounding opportunity. It was pretty much like a 5-out. Maybe Sabonis playing in the dunker's position, but it was pretty much, like I said, give the ball to him either 3-point line or elbow, and then his back to the basket every time. There would be some where he would face up, but his back's always going to enter the basket at some point. It's going to be a fadeaway or up fake or whatever it may be, to where like I said, it became predictable. It was just another Fox situation, just a different kind of player. Fox is using his speed, trying to get downhill, get to the bucket, get to his spots. DeRozan, slow old man game. Trying to get to that to where, you knew no matter what it was, where it was going, how it was going to happen. To where there was nothing last year to where it was like, oh, he shot the game winner, he tried to do it. You knew where it was going.
His age started to show a little bit too, because there in that position, to me, you have to be, and I'm not even sure if they had him at the 3 or the 4 between him and Levine or whatever the case may be. But to me, those two positions, you have to have the ability to drive to the basket at will.
Especially if you're a smaller guy. I get physicality and stuff like that. But, no matter what situation, if you get to the paint, good things are going to happen. Whether that's collapsing the defense, whether it's, drawing a foul, kicking out from there, because there's a lot of help in the NBA. You got to be able to help at the same time. That's what Shea sees great. Like his willingness to want to see J-Dub succeed, Chet succeed, this guy succeed. And it doesn't matter who Wiggins succeed. Everybody was going to get an opportunity. To where, like I said, when we did it, a lot of good things happen. Paint touches always are beneficial, no matter if it's about a game winner or just in general, to where, if we can get to that paint, in crunch time, it's just going to help us.
I can make a whole 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 episodes on how bad the Kings defense was. And then I know why it was too. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so for instance, like you just talk about the collapsing of the defense, right? What I could not understand for the life of me is why, and this is because I'm not having a shot blocker. I understand why they're doing that, but the Kings get killed at the 3. They're the worst have the worst 3-point defense in the league, right?
It was bad.
And I'm sitting there looking at it the whole entire time, and they're right there in the corner, right? They're just leaving them wide open. Now, whether it's Keegan Murray, whether it was De'Aaron Fox over there, whoever was over there guarding these players in the corner, for some reason, they decide they want to sag off of them too far. Now, I'm not sure if it's like bad IQ or just bad instincts, right? Okay, you can sag off a little bit, but you're not going to block the shot if somebody decides they want to drive in, right? why are you really heavily collapsing like that, leaving a known shooter wide open?
Just everything. The rotations were bad.
Terrible.
Helping the helper. The communication.
Oh, yeah.
It was just, like you said, like, teams were shooting 30, 40, 50 3-point shots a game against us. That was like their game plan.
Yeah.
There was a stretch where like every game was like teams would put up 15 to 25 threes made a game.
Breaking records like every game.
And it's like, 3-point shots. And it's just like, it was so frustrating to where you knew what was going to happen.
Yep.
And they would do that because, once again, going back to it, second chance points.
Yep.
We're going to shoot the three, and when I make it, we're going to get that rebound.
Yep. And then we'll kick it out, and somebody's going to hit it. If we get 3 chances, we leave in here with a bucket, whether it's a 2 or a 3.
They're getting rebounds, and either going back up or they're kicking it out, and that ball is moving because we're in scramble mode.
Yep.
We're already small as it is with Keegan at the 4.
Yep.
So if we get him out of position, Keegan might end up on a point guard. Not saying he can't guard, but in the scramble mode off of defense, they got the advantage.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then going back, we got to foul, we got to do that, or they're just going to get a bucket off of it.
Except for us, if we put a team in scramble mode, by the time it gets to DeMar, it's over. You know what I'm saying? It's done. You know what I mean? That's it, right?
Yeah.
There was a time, man. I wish I would have recorded this, man. I think it had to been. No, it was DeMar, because he's really bad. He's really bad on defending them corners too.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time I'm sitting there looking. I'm like, I forgot who they were playing against. It had to be. It may have been Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
And Jalen, I think it had to maybe Jalen Suggs was standing in the corner. Jalen Suggs was killing us that game. And one of the other players took the ball to the rack, right, and then passed to the other side. And I'm looking at DeMar, and he's not even guarding his man no more. He's all the way on the opposite key.
Yeah.
Like, that just blew my mind. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
The ball was, 2 passes away?
2 passes away. You know what I mean?
And
I'm like, he's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then that's just like a testament, like, either it's just really bad basketball IQ, just bad awareness, or a combination of all of it, right?
Yeah.
Because if you had the right type of IQ, and you can get so many tips and deflections if you just fake like you're going to help, and then go back to your man, right? Because they're going to kick it out to him, right? Because this is on the scouting report. You guys collapse way too much. Boom, that's a steal going the other way every time.
Yeah, and you can see that was a main problem last year. A lot of times, Christie would call timeouts after those plays.
Yep.
And then before the timeout, if you're watching on TV, you would see a lot of, not so much holding accountable, it was just more like frustration stuff and talk like you should get there. And then a lot of guys with their hands up, like, what do you, So I think that's what, they got to work on a lot more.
Yeah.
Is that communication, the trusting, the movement, as far as, we should, the 2 teams in the finals this year showed team defense.
Yeah.
It wasn't just on Siakam. It wasn't just on one guy. Like, a lot of guys were getting their hands on the ball, and they didn't get the steal.
Yeah.
It was just, if I get my hand on this ball, we have a high chance of getting it as a team.
Yep.
Not just, I want to get the steal because I got my hands on the ball. I might get this deflection, stuff like that, to where, like I said, that doesn't show up on the stat sheet.
Yep.
But it counted so much.
Yep.
You saw Halliburton driving the lane, helping, getting a hand on the ball.
Yep.
Caruso would do it, but, Wiggins would get the steal.
Yep.
It didn't matter to him.
Yep.
Because in the day, we got the ball.
Yep.
And communication was there. Their help side defense, their rotations, it wasn't like, oh, that's not my man.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, to where, we're young enough to get better, but it's just somebody's got to, once again, go back to anchor us to that.
And I think Sabonis has bad defensive IQ. It's apparent, because there's too many times where, he's been in the league long enough to know certain things should go a certain way.
Yeah.
He shouldn't be looking confused on defense to me. He shouldn't be wondering, why this is happening. You know what I mean?
A lot of teams will go just basic high pick and roll.
Yeah.
And he can't hedge. He's got to drop coverage.
Yep.
He's not the best defender.
Yeah.
He can defend you at the rim.
Yep.
And he can contest.
Yep.
But if you got him out there,
he gets burnt. He gets blown by.
Yeah. And like I said, they're blown by, or it's just, the IQ where, for switching, and now you got Keon guarding their center.
Yep.
To where, it's.
Oh, don't get me on that, man. How many times you see that?
Yeah.
Where it was just a dumb switch. Like, why are you switching?
Yeah, especially,
you know what I mean?
They call them now, the NBA switches.
Yeah.
Where it's just not even a screen. And
it's just a switch.
You're just standing there in an automatic switch. Like, it's not, there's no, there's no reason for it. And it doesn't make any sense. especially like I said, with us playing such bad defense.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think there was times too that they would, we were trying to show like we don't want to switch. We have to stay where we're at.
Yeah.
Christie, I think it was preaching that.
Yeah, don't switch, especially if somebody's killing you. If this is a bad matchup, when you're switching and all of a sudden Sabonis is on Shea, and it really was like unforced, right? It's not even that the whoever was guarding Shea tried to force or even step through the screen or whatever. It was just like a switch, just because.
And the switch happens almost by the logo.
Yeah. It's like what? What are we doing?
Nobody's even attacking the paint to switch. It's just like didn't make it. It never does in the NBA nowadays with those switches.
Yep.
But with the way the game's played, hopefully with the draft picks, with being able to match up more.
Yep.
Is what we need because we're going to be relying from here on out the bench.
Yeah.
The bench has always been something to where we wanted the rookie. Who is he? What's his name again? We just drafted him. Blanked my head.
Oh, Clifford.
No, last year's.
Oh, Devin Carter.
Yeah. We wanted him to come in.
Yep.
We were talking about him and his efficiency and the points per game and all this coming from what's it, Providence?
Yep.
Yeah. He was one of the high scoring, efficient guys out there.
Yep.
And so, not being able to get a real glimpse of that.
Yep.
Especially coming off the year that we gave up Mitchell.
Yeah.
I think we were looking for somebody to replace that and we didn't get that.
Yeah.
A guy like Mitchell, that guy, he's guarding 1 through 5, and you can't even tell there's a drop off.
Yeah. Imagine him with this line. I think they pulled the trigger a little bit too fast with him. I think they really were just trying to get Sasha Vezenkov out of town just because he was about to blow the lid off of this thing.
Now, what if, going back to it, because we talked about it, what if we give Rosen over there and we get Mitchell and like a Hawkins or a Duncan back, and we get that little piece back.
I like Mitchell.
Yeah.
I've always liked him.
Yeah.
Okay, so take you back to his rookie season.
Yeah.
I believe when Fox got hurt towards the end of the season and he was starting point guard, homeboy was getting busy. You know what I mean? Like you really see it. But then, the next season he doesn't really get that much playing time again. The Mike Brown system, the Mike Brown, the toying with the players, and you're gonna play one night and the next night you're gonna get 3 or 4
and
DNPs.
no excuse for it.
No excuses
it was
for
just
it.
Coach's decision.
Yeah, which was crazy. Which I don't think anybody really could have been able to play in that type of a system anyway. Besides like the ones that were consistent. Which even Keon Ellis had this past season. At the beginning of the season, had some CDs in there or some DNP CDs. Which nobody understood why.
Yeah, he would come off games where he was doing good.
Yeah,
and there would be a DNP, and you're like,
what happened?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Any kind of tweak or something we don't know in the press conference?
Yeah,
it's just
just nothing.
Like Keon's good; he'll be ready for the next one.
Yeah,
that's all it is. And it kind of flashes of Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, same thing.
Guys like that with Keon, confidence is a big thing. Murray, you could see he's a confidence guy.
Yep.
But going back to Mitchell, like you saw him in the playoffs.
Yep, getting busy.
He was a little spark in one of those games, and he's getting confident in his shot, which he's always been. He knew that was his weakness when he was here. There's stories about first one in, last one out. Literally, they have to turn the lights out on him to get him out.
Yep.
You can't be here anymore. Yep. You got to go home and get some sleep.
Yep.
There's a lot of guys that do that, but like you can see it's been 4 years.
Yep.
The big jump he's making season to season, and he's still being a defender.
Yeah, lockdown.
He's not okay with being just a Patrick Beverly.
Yeah, he's a dog. Man.
Yeah, he wants to be able to average 15 or more a game.
Yep.
And then lock you up on the other side.
Yep.
There's not many guys like that. Only guy that you could say is Derek White.
Yeah, I like Derek
or Drew
White
Holiday.
Yeah,
those guys were their two-way players at the point guard, shooting guard position.
Yep.
Those guys are hard to find because they're putting so much work in on the court.
Yep.
And your teammates got no choice but to see that and kind of, okay, if he's doing that, I got to do that.
Yeah.
It's not telling you, it's showing you.
Yep.
As far as night in, night out, like you're earning your check. You know what I mean? And you don't want your team to be known as the laughing stock anymore.
Yeah.
It's going to take everybody to play, maybe 50% of what Davion's playing.
Yep.
Because they're not even playing half of what he's playing.
Yeah, because he's going 125% every time, every possession. If he just was bigger, he'd probably be the greatest player of all time. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like if he was 6'4", 6'5".
Draymond size.
Or Draymond size. He'd be dangerous dude. All right, so we're probably gonna wrap it up here pretty soon. What do you think about number one, Scott Perry? What grade do you give him so far for these draft picks and also these undrafted free agents?
For this one, like just for the 2 picks, I would give like an A.
Okay.
Just based on the needs.
Yep.
And that center one definitely boosted him up.
Yeah.
Past years we would have gone guard.
Yep.
Guard heavy, as you know. Last year,
Yep.
last couple years, 5 or 6 point guards, shooting guards.
To end up with none.
Yeah, but kind of going for somebody that was like that,
Yep.
and I think he's going to benefit us. As of right now, just the look contest and the videos and the stats,
Yep.
you got to give him an A.
Yep.
But next step now as a manager, now you got free agency on Monday.
Yep.
What are we doing from there? And then once that happens, what trades are going to happen? It's going to happen quick, but I hope they're aggressive.
Absolutely.
Because it's been a lot of time, even with the Maloofs and what's the name that just got let go, is a lot of waiting.
Yeah.
A lot of letting other teams dictate what our options are.
Yeah.
And some trades happen. I looked at it yesterday. A lot of guys have been moved around.
Yep.
It's quiet, but it
happens.
It's starting to be like the norm.
Yep.
To where like you can go get a top player and it's all right now.
Yep.
The playing field could be evened off one trade.
Yep.
And it doesn't take a lot.
Yep.
If you can get a Luka for one player and a pick, it's one of those things to where, it's interesting and exciting because the Kings have those players to go out and hopefully make a move like that.
Yeah, you got to be bold. You can't be scared though, right?
Yeah.
I think Monty McNair was scared a lot of the times. That's why we kind of were at the bottom of the pit when it came to some of the trades, right? Like where it just seems like every time he made a decision, every time he made a trade, it didn't seem like we got a fair shake at it.
It was from him. It didn't feel like it was from him. Like first year, I felt like that was Monty.
Yeah.
And I think the other years was kind of like we got to sit here and talk about this. Yeah, we got, and it wasn't like an aggressive one. Even when we traded Fox, it was this is all we can get for him.
Yep.
And it's it's just the league in general is weird. You can go from getting Luka for a top player like AD, but one pick, but then Bane, you get 2 players and 4 or 5 first round picks.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So it really depends, how eager you want to be. You don't want to be looked at like you're the king, so you got to give up more. But at the same time, you don't want to get pushed around, and looked at like, okay, like we can't do anything.
But I think that so let's from the top to the bottom. I think the Kings were just getting pushed around, or even it showed on the court too, though, right?
Yeah.
You get pushed around in these trades, you get pushed around in free agency because nobody really wants to get here. You don't really want to make no bold moves, and then on the court, it just shows. We go after the nicest of nice guys. We bring in somebody that's sitting on the couch for the last 6 months. You know what I'm saying? So, to me, I think Scott Perry, just looking at this deal where he went and got Clifford, the way he structured that, right?
Yeah.
The way he negotiated that made me feel like, okay, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, that move for that pick is smart because it's basically, what do we got, 32 teams in the league?
Yep.
It's basically saying we might be top, we might be bottom 16.
Yep.
So instead of doing a top 14 like we did for Herter, which hurt us, our top 13, add a few picks on there, and we don't know what 2 years is going to look like.
Yep.
So we essentially could have got, we got these Clifford for free. We might still keep our draft pick.
Yeah, exactly. Because if we don't make the playoffs in that 2027 season, we're getting that draft pick.
Yeah.
Period. No matter what. Because we only finished worse 14.
Yeah,
we got 14 or 15.
Yeah, we got a good building block. Stuff like that. And there's 2 years, who knows, Clifford might make that jump to where it was all worth it.
Yep.
To where just a couple picks made the difference. To where if we had the 13 this year, if it was a top 13 protected, we got, I don't know who was drafted 13, but I think a lot of talent came this year.
Yeah. It was looking good. They say the draft next year is supposed to be even better. So
we got hopefully the Boozer twins coming out.
Yeah.
A lot of guys.
AJ. Cam Boozer,
AJ, we'll see how he does. The number 1 player in the country.
Yep.
So, definitely next year is one of the ones where it'd be interesting to see who's really going to tank next year.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking too. Like with that being said, though, right? Like it makes this season very interesting with some of these draft picks and knowing what could be at stake next year. Like if I'm Scott Perry, man, I'm keeping that in the back of my head a little bit, though, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just thinking, like, man,
if you can get a top 5, top 10, maybe you can boost up off that draft.
Find a way to trade with trade one of these assets with a team
and
that
you
can get
got some
first.
guys that you can get a first round pick for.
Sure.
You know what I mean? The guys that are that they believe are 1 or 2 players away.
Yeah.
You know, and they're trying to rebuild with a Sabonis or something like that, or a DeRozan.
Yep.
You know, to where maybe, you know, injuries is a big thing.
Yep.
You know, it doesn't have to be a top team.
Yeah.
You know, one injury could go a long way.
Yep.
Where you do the deal, you could end up top 5, top 10.
Got a dark horse for you. And, you know, I don't know how this even makes any sense. You know what I mean? But Tyrese Halliburton just ruptured his ACL. They're gonna need something, right?
Yeah.
If they want to stay relevant, because if, to me, like when you see injuries like this, sometimes like you look at Boston, right? They just kind of did a small blow up, right? You start getting rid of some players, right? Because you know next year without one of your main players, you're not going to really be able to compete. What do you think about a DeRozan in Indiana?
Yeah, I mean, but I look back at us, right? How much is what they got going? How much are they willing to give up for something like that?
Yep.
Which, you know, looking at it, I think the only one would be, I mean, that's due for a contract. It was Nemhart.
Yep. I think Obi Toppin just signed. He just
and then what's his name due for one too? Naismith.
And also Ben Matherin. And I love that kid, Ben Matherin.
Yeah, he wasn't getting. He was kind of like a Kaminga role. You know what I mean?
Coming off the bench. Yep.
But they had so much talent to where, you know, he would get his moments and shine off of it.
Yep.
You know, but like I said, there's some stuff over there, but I don't know if I would. It's enough to entice me as far as what we got going over here, because I think a lot of, you know, players that we would get off that situation wouldn't be like. I think we need to get bigger, and stronger. If we can get power forwards, of course, a point guard. If we get power forwards, and, you know, stuff like that, build to where, you know, we can add that length. We wanted OG. I think we wanted OG at the time too last year. We wanted size.
Yep. What do you think about Obi Toppin? Power forward. He's solid, big dude, super athletic. Can shoot the ball now.
Yeah, he's just not consistent. You know, he showed game 6, 20-something points, and then game 7, crickets.
Yep.
You know, then we have guys similar to that. You know what I mean? To where it's like, it's not a bad guy. Athleticism is definitely there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But definitely size wise we need. I don't know. Like I said, we're going back to, I don't know if I would look at Indiana for something like that. Yeah. You know, like I said, if I go, my main one would be Miami. Yeah. You know, getting guys like Jaquez and stuff like that. Yep. And a Robinson, or like I said, bringing back Mitchell. Yep. You know, kind of like a homecoming thing to where, you know, full circle. Yep. You know, something like that to, you know, I would look into that.
Yep. Yep. Well, cool. So I guess my grade for Scott Perry in this draft, I'll go an A. I'll give him a solid A. Yeah. Just based on size and length, right? Yeah. Finally getting us a stretch 5, stretch 4, somebody to stretch the floor at that 4 and 5 position, which we needed for I don't know how long, that we probably never had, maybe since Brad Miller, but he didn't even really shoot the 3 too much. You know what I mean?
Or Cousins.
Cousins. Yeah, he started to shoot the 3 a little bit there before we traded him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll give him a solid A. Yeah. I think he did a really good job.
We'll check Bonk on it throughout the year, you know, headline.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But from the look contest and the papers, which you can go off of.
Yep.
You can't complain off guys that are both averaging almost double-doubles.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely takes defensive rebounding on this squad way up. And then on top of that, Keegan took a nice little jump as far as rebounding goes too. I think he was somewhere around 7-8 for the season, which was really good though, right? Yeah. Like, you know, but everything else was just kind of he didn't have that. It wasn't a bad season. It just kind of tapered off a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he still pretty much had the same amount of points that he had the year before, but you know, the rebounds went up. He had a bigger defensive assignment or whatever. Yeah. So, you know, I like Keegan. I'm looking forward to him getting more offensive touches or even getting more involved in the offense. I want to see that dude be
I think he's going to have to with this last
year. To. Yeah, for sure.
We got to know what we got. Yeah. Or if we're going to pay him the max, or if we're going to look at the trade deadline. So he doesn't have a full season. Yeah. He's got a good 20
He got to start
games.
Off. Yeah, he got to start off hot. He got to start off like looking like, damn, this dude made a jump. He got to make like a Barnes out there in Toronto. He has to make a jump like that. He has to make a jump like Evan Mobley. Like, he has to make that type of jump in order for us to sit here and look at him.
Especially like we're looking at him as a starter.
Yeah.
Right. And there's you know, every year going back to untouchable.
Yep.
We have to see why As Kings fans, at least for me, I don't know why he's untouchable yet.
Yeah.
Right, just because of belief. Yes.
Yeah.
I believe
the potential's there. Yeah.
Yeah, potential's there, but sometimes players don't reach their potential.
Yep.
So it's just one of the ones. I hope he reaches potential.
Absolutely.
It's just going to help us.
Yep.
I don't want him to get traded.
Yeah.
I want him to progress every year, but I said coming down to it now you got 30 games.
Yep. And then I don't think Scott Perry is the type of person to sit there and hold and wait too long.
Mm-hmm.
I think he tries to strike while the iron is hot.
I hope he's coming in more, with more authority, more say so.
Yep.
Rather than going back to Vivek for everything.
Yep.
Because like I said, no, nothing bad against Vivek, but I know he's got the Golden State mindset still, what he came from.
Yeah.
And trying to build something similar to what they got. Which you could see it with the lineup, small ball.
Yeah.
Which Warriors ran a lot for their championship years.
Yep.
Sometimes it doesn't work for every team.
Yeah. You got to have a Draymond Green or somebody that at that position.
Yeah. Just a high IQ player.
Yeah.
And we have some hoopers.
Yep.
But nobody that's, Chris Paul or Draymond Green or LeBron, just IQ wise, not play. IQ goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. You wanna close us out today, brother?
Yeah, we can close it out.
Yeah.
I know it's fun, but
yeah, go, brother. Close us out. Let's see what you got.
Oh, you want me to close it out?
Close it out, brother. Let's see what you got, man.
Man,
So your camera right there. Look.
Yeah. Well, so pretty much that. We appreciate you guys for tuning in and watching another episode of Sactown Hoops. It's been great. Chatting it up with my boy Carl. Look forward to the next episode. If you guys got any input, feedback, we love to hear it. Going forward, we're just starting this thing off, but hoping to definitely hear you guys' feedback. That's the biggest thing. We look forward to the next one. Like I said, I don't do it as good as you, man. This is one of my first ones.
You did a good job, brother. You did a good job. We'll tap in with y'all next time. Peace.